Dean Rusk disagrees with you, and he was the Secretary of State at the time, but that's fine.
The communist nations have exploited the turmoil of a time of transition in an effort to extend communist control into other areas of the world.
Thoughts on Dean Rusk and America's involvement in Vietnam? I know next to nothing about that.
Exactly.
Contrary to Joe Biden's past statements, Hunter Biden admitted he received money from Chinese companies, but characterized it as incredibly ethical. Did you receive money from China or not?
I received money from a Chinese company.
How many millions have you received from Chinese companies?
I don't know the exact amount, but I know that it was all completely legal. It was incredibly ethical.
Hunter Biden admitted he traveled with then Vice President Biden on Air Force Two to Beijing, where he then introduced his father to his business partner, Jonathan Lee. Then Vice President Biden later went on to write a college letter of recommendation for Lee's son. Did there come a time when you went with your father on Air Force Two to Beijing, China for one of your father's official government trips?
I traveled with my father on that trip as I've traveled with my father my entire life.
And when you traveled on Air Force Two for that trip, when you all were in Beijing, did there come a time when you introduced your father, who was vice president at the time, to Jonathan Lee?
When we returned from an event to the hotel, there was a rope line, and Jonathan Lee was in the lobby of the hotel where I was going to meet him for coffee. In that line, I introduced my dad to Jonathan Lee and a friend of his, and they shook hands and I believe probably took a photograph. And then my father went up to his room, and I went to have coffee with Jonathan Lee.
Who was the friend that was with Jonathan Lee?
I don't remember his name directly. It was a friend of Jonathan's.
Prior to introducing your father to Jonathan Lee, what did you tell your father about Jonathan Lee?
I didn't tell him anything about Jonathan Lee.
At the time that you did introduce your father to Jonathan Lee, did you or any of your business associates have any potential business with Jonathan Lee?
I was working with Jonathan on a potential that he had an idea for creating a private equity fund based in China to do cross-border investments.
Lee, the CEO of a state-backed investment firm, wired $250,000 to Hunter Biden as a loan that Hunter Biden never repaid. Instead, Dem donor Kevin Morris took on the debt for Hunter. So, in this, when you say you collected no money in your book, the reality is that just the year earlier, in 2019, you had received a $250,000 wire from Jonathan Lee. Isn't that correct?
To send back to him for the equity stake in the fund.
You never repaid the loan to Jonathan Lee. Isn't that correct?
Did I repay the loan?
Correct.
I sold my equity interest in it, and part of that is the assumption of the loan.
You never paid any money back to Jonathan Lee, did you?
What I'm telling you is that I sold my equity interest in BHR, and part of that arm's length transaction is the assumption of the loan, and that is between Jonathan Lee and the equity holder.
And that equity holder is Kevin Morris, correct?
Yes, it is.
Hunter Biden confirmed CEFC Chairman Ye Jianming, who is linked to the CCP, gave him a diamond. And at some point while you were in Miami, Florida, did you receive a diamond from someone at CEFC or Ye Jianming?
Yes, and as I'm sure you all travel, and particularly as it relates to the business culture in China, I can say that when I first received the diamond, I thought it was an extravagant gift, but at the same time, I know that James, Rob, and myself, who were the attendees of that meeting, not Tony Bobulinski, by the way, gave Mr. Ye a magnum bottle of, I don't know scotch, but 1967 Macallan that ultimately was worth far more than the diamond that he gave to us.
What did you do with the diamond?
I gave it to my uncle.
Your uncle being James Biden?
Yeah.
Rob Walker previously told the committees that Joe Biden met with CEFC officials at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C. Hunter Biden could not recall the meeting. Okay, so to the best of your recollection, you can't remember ever being at the Four Seasons with CEFC officials?
Again, I don't even know, what Four Seasons are they talking about, first of all?
The one in Washington, D.C.
Oh, in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I know that I've had lunch at the Four Seasons a number of times. I don't ever remember having lunch with Chairman, with Mr. Ye at the Four Seasons in which my father stopped by. But again, I'm telling you, I don't contest Rob's memory of it. If Rob is certain of that, then it most likely happened.
When asked about sending a threatening WhatsApp message demanding payment from CEFC in July 2017, Hunter Biden said he was out of his mind, yet he knew his father was not sitting next to him. However, it has been reported that laptop photos show Hunter was at Joe Biden's Delaware home the day he sent this message, and CEFC money poured into Hunter Biden's joint account days later.
The fact of the matter is that there's no other text message that you have in which I say anything remotely to this, and I was out of my mind. I can also tell you this. My father was not sitting next to me. My father had no awareness. My father had no awareness of the business that I was doing.
Hunter Biden admitted he attempted to set up a lunch between his father and CEFC associates. This is August 27th, 2017. You write, I will pick you up at 12 p.m. in the lobby of your hotel. The luncheon will start at 12:30 p.m. Where is the luncheon, Kevin? My uncle will be here with his brother, brothers all in caps, who would like to say hello to the chairman. He is here to visit my daughter. Do you have any recollection of sending a message of this sort?
Again, I don't have a specific recollection of ever sending the text. But what I do see and what's produced here, and if it is actually valid and verified, is that my dad was... What I think I'm saying is my dad was in town to visit my my daughter, who was at Columbia Law School at the time. My uncle was also in town. I was going lunch with Kevin Dong, and it was the chance that Mr. Ye may join us for a lunch. And I said, well, maybe we'll all stop by. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Hunter Biden confirmed Tony Bobulinski's testimony that he met with Joe Biden and James Biden in California. So the first message says, morning, please let me know if we will do early dinner with your uncle and dad, and where. Also, for document translation, do you want it in simple Chinese or traditional? You respond, not sure on dinner yet, and whatever is the most common for a Chinese legal doc.
Yes.
Do you remember this exchange, or what was going on between you and Mr. Bobulinski at this time?
Yes. At this time was the first time I ever met Mr. Bobulinski. He had a prior relationship with Mr. Gillier. I believe that we were introduced either the night before or the day before. I don't know the exact date. I'm certain in some of these documents it's there. And I was in Los Angeles for business meetings. My uncle was also in Los Angeles for business meetings. My father was going to speak at the Milken Conference in Los Angeles regarding the cancer moonshot. And the night before, I believe I'd had dinner with Mr. Bobulinski for the first time and was introduced to him. And I said to him that let's meet the next day.
And did Mr. Bobulinski meet with your father during that trip?
He met him in the lobby of the hotel of I believe it was the
Beverly Hilton?
Beverly Hilton. My dad's flight arrived, I think, at 11 a.m.
11 p.m.?
11 p.m. We were in the lobby bar with Mr. Bobulinski having coffee.
And your uncle as well?
What?
Was your uncle there too?
My uncle and myself. I think my uncle was also staying at that hotel. And so, yeah, I know that, if you go further it says, but I think that the reality is that he didn't. Anyway, my dad went and shook hands with Tony.
Hunter Biden admitted he put his father on speakerphone with his foreign business associates. Did you ever place your father on speakerphone with any of your business associates?
Over the course of the last 30 years, when speakerphone was invented on a cell phone, I'm certain my dad has called me. My dad calls me like I'm sure a lot of your parents do, or a lot of you do with your children. And if I'm with people that are friends of mine, I'll have him say hi.
By placing him on speakerphone?
I don't know whether it's speakerphone. Devin, I think. What did he testify that over the course of our 10-year relationship, I was maybe 10 or 20 times that he can remember? He can't recall the specific times that I put my dad on speakerphone when I was at a dinner or at a social event. So that means, over the course of 10 years, twice a year, my dad would call me, and I would be in the middle of a dinner. And I always answer his call. Based upon my life's experience. And you're telling me, so 2 times a year over the course of 10 years, maybe more, or years with Devin Archer. Yes, that probably did happen.
And why would you place your dad on speakerphone? And the reason I ask is that if my dad were to call me right now.
I'm surprised my dad hasn't called me right now. And if he did, I would put him on speakerphone to say hi to you and to Congressman Raskin and everybody else in the room.
Hunter Biden confirmed his father, then Vice President Biden, dined with Kenes Rakishev, a Kazakhstani oligarch, at Cafe Milano. Devin Archer confirmed this was around the time this same Kazakhstani oligarch sent money for Hunter Biden's expensive sports car, yet Hunter Biden was evasive about the payment during his testimony. Do you know who sent the $142,300 in the Rosemont Seneca Bohai account, the exact same amount that purchased the car?
I do not know exactly how it was purchased, but the car was purchased. I took possession of a car.
Who sent the money for $142,300 into the Rosemont Seneca Bohai account?
As far as I knew, Devin.
Who sent the money from Novartis into the Rosemont Seneca Bohai account that was $142,300?
Again, I don't know what Novartis is, but I believe that the money for the car was sent to Devin. Then, ultimately, Devin purchased the car for me.
And Devin never told you who was providing the money for the car?
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying to you, I'm not. I don't know technically who Novartis is, so I can't answer what. Your question other than to say my belief was that, but I do not know exactly who Novartis is. If you tell me Novartis is connected to Kenes Rakishev, then I accept that to be the fact. I have no issue with this. They're telling you is that I received a car, and I know why I received a car. I received a car because I was helping. My understanding is that I was engaged with Devon. A way for Devon to engage me to help with his Rosemont Realty. It was payment. It was a cockamamie way to do it, but that's what my understanding was.
Did you ever introduce Kenneth Rakishev to your father?
Kenneth Rakishev met my father, I believe, once at a dinner that I had for the World Food Program.
That dinner is at Cafe Milano?
Yes.
Hunter Biden confirmed his father, then Vice President Biden, dined with Russian oligarch, Yelena Baturina, Kazakhstani oligarch, Kenneth Rakishev, and Burisma's corporate secretary, Vadim Pozharsky, at Cafe Milano in D.C. There are 2 dinners where your father goes to the different dinners and at the respective dinners, and I'm not saying they're all at the same time, but Yelena Baturina, the mayor of Moscow, is at one of the dinners. Karim Masimov is at one of the dinners. Kenneth Rakishev is at one of the dinners. Is that correct?
I believe so, and I don't know who was at which dinner exactly when, but if you put it in front of me, I could decipher that for you. But I will say this. I've had dozens of dinners at Cafe Milano for many, many different reasons. Whether it was just to be with family, or whether it was to be with friends, or whether it was to be with friends and associates, or whether it was to do, for instance, a dinner that was a presentation for the US-UN World Food Program.
Jim Biden initially said he was not part of a deal with Rob Walker, Hunter Biden, James Gilliar, and Tony Bobulinski, but when presented with an agreement with his signature on it, he changed his story to say he did not recall signing that agreement.
So, over the break, Mr. Biden realized that he misspoke on one particular aspect of the questions he was asked.
All right.
Which is there. He doesn't recall the actual document. But there was a document that reflects a 5-way split from May of 2017 that bears his electronic signature.
All right.
And you can ask him questions, obviously, about that. But he doesn't. Has never, to his recollection, has never signed anything electronically in his life and doesn't remember. I don't know how to.
Jim Biden's testimony conflicts with Hunter Biden and Tony Bobulinski's sworn testimony. Both Hunter Biden and Tony Bobulinski testified that Joe Biden met with Tony Bobulinski, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden at a hotel in California. Jim Biden said this never happened. And then that's on May 2nd. And then the following text from Tony Bob is, "Morning, please let me know all set for things this mRNAing, assume morning. I don't have credentials to get into Milken, so just want to make sure not an issue to get me in. Where should we meet this morning?"
Uh-huh.
The questions related to first text message here. Does this refresh your recollection that Joe Biden did meet with Tony Bobulinski?
Joe Biden never met with Tony Bobulinski. To your knowledge. To my knowledge.
At the Beverly Hotel on May 2nd, 2017, were you with Tony Bobulinski the entire time you were at that hotel?
No.
Where did you go?
I have no idea. I mean, I was in and around the area, but I don't know I don't know. I could have been back up in my room.
Was there any time period that you were aware of where Hunter Biden and Tony Bobulinski were together, but not with you at the Beverly Hotel that evening?
That he would know?
That he knows of.
No.
But it's your testimony here today that Tony Bobulinski never met Joe Biden in your presence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's your testimony here today that Tony Bobulinski, you're not aware of him meeting with Joe Biden while you were not in the room.
Correct. He never, to my knowledge, met with my brother.
Jim Biden testified that Hunter Biden received a diamond from a parent at Hunter Biden's child's school when Joe Biden was vice president to entice him to do business with CEFC. According to Jim Biden, Hunter Biden gave it to Jim Biden to have it appraised. Jim Biden said he then threw it away. Hunter Biden only disclosed receiving what appears to be a separate diamond from CEFC chairman Ye Jianming during a trip to Miami in February 2017, which Hunter Biden said he also gave to Jim Biden. Were you aware that Chairman Ye at some point gave Hunter Biden a diamond?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. When I asked him, he asked me to come to lunch in Washington. I'm not far away. Hunter? Hunter. I beg your pardon. Hunter, asked me to come, that he wanted to talk to me about something. To his office at the House of Sweden, his offices, okay? And he said a father of one of his daughters, or a classmate of his daughters, came to him and asked him if he would be interested in getting involved with CEFC, okay? He told him that they were a mega, company, that they supplied Western Europe with a vast majority of their, LNG or whatever it might be. They were a very, very large company, and that they were interested in doing business with Hunter, okay? At any rate, I said, show me this stone. So he shows me the stone. I showed it to Bayfeld. He was in Philadelphia. And he said, this is worth a couple $100, And I said, hey, Hunter, the money. This is not worth anything. And I took it and I threw it in the trash.
Who gave Hunter Biden the diamond? Could you just repeat that one part?
I don't know the gentleman's name, but it was someone. It was a father from a friend or an acquaintance of one of his daughters who went to Sidwell Friends.
In the United States?
In Washington, D.C.
Jim Biden said he called the law firm Monzak, Mirsky & Browder and requested money from Joe Biden's bank account. Jim Biden does not know if the money came from Joe Biden's S Corporation, Celtic Capri, or his personal bank account. This law firm is also associated with Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, and Rob Walker's LLCs. $200,000 that the Democrats put on the record the last hour, whether that came from Joe Biden's personal account or from a corporate account, correct?
Correct. Mel Monzak has been... No, you answered. No.
And when you paid that money back?
By Mr. Q. And when you paid that money back? Yeah.
To Joe Biden, you wrote those checks back to just Joe Biden, correct? Or your wife did?
My wife did.
And so those checks, we don't know whether they were deposited then into Joe Biden's personal account or a corporate account, correct?
I have no idea.
Jim Biden received massive loans from Democrat donors but hasn't repaid them. For example, Jim Biden received $800,000 in loans from Joey Langston, but he only paid $400,000 back.
The point is, I said, Joey, I am anticipating getting a substantial amount of money in the immediate short term, and it was. I was supposed to be paid from a deal, okay? That didn't materialize, and it was supposed to be a done deal. A deal ain't done until it's done, okay? And so I said, I feel that I'll be able to pay you back this within the next, 3 to 6 months, something like that. And he said, well, how much? And I said, $400,000. And then he said, no problem. And so I borrowed the $400,000 from him. And I paid this obligation that I had that was of a personal nature. Okay? I subsequently paid him back his $400,000. And it wasn't a written document, but he loaned me personally as a friend. And there was some interest that accrued. It was interest related. I don't know, it was 6% or something like that. And I haven't to date been able to pay him back the full amount. There.
We know how much it is. I don't know that he has a full recollection of exactly what the accounting is, but...
Okay, so...
I'll paraphrase from...
Sure.
We interviewed Joey Langston. My memory, I'm just paraphrasing this, that he loaned you. He said approximately, I believe, around $800,000 or so. He didn't have an exact amount.
That's not inconsistent with what we believe.
And that you had paid back approximately half or $400,000, I believe is what he said.
Also not inconsistent with what we believe.
But I...
Yeah.
$200,000 of that was interest, okay? So, But the fact of the matter is, I am still obligated, and I still feel a responsibility to pay him back once I am in a position, after these usurious legal fees and all the other things that I've been involved in.
In another instance, Jim Biden received $900,000 in loans from John Hynansky, but he still owes him $100,000. And in 2009, while your brother was vice president, he made a speech in Ukraine and called John Hynansky a good friend in his speech. Is that an accurate representation?
Yeah, a good friend, a good acquaintance, a supporter. He wrote a check for, one of his campaigns for, the $2,500 or $2,300, whatever it was. He may have,
So he was a supporter of your brother as well?
He was a supporter of my brother, yes.
He was a financial supporter of his campaigns?
Yes. Correct. Yes.
Okay, and in this speech, it's also publicly reported that your brother called him a prominent businessman. Would that sound accurate to you?
That would not surprise me at all.
Okay, it's been publicly reported that Mr. Hynansky has given you approximately $900,000 in loans. Does that sound like a fair and accurate estimate?
Yes.
No, that seems quite high, actually.
But he just said yes.
I know, but
No, I don't know.
But no, because those loans are documented, and that does not seem correct, from what we know.
I know I have an outstanding balance of, I think it's $97,000.
Okay.
That I still owe him.
Okay. So if $900,000 isn't an accurate representation, what would be a closer to accurate representation?
We believe it's half of that. But Mr. Hynansky might be right.
I've never challenged him to fight him about it. Again, we're friends. And Mr. Hynansky, is a very wealthy guy, but he is still a...
Careful about the... Right.
Yeah, he watches his pennies.
Former Biden associate Michael Lewitt gave Jim Biden $225,000 in loans, and Lewitt forgave all of it. Lewitt is currently being investigated by the SEC. Do you have any loan docs for this $225,000 loan?
I'll have to ask my wife, but
There were loan documents.
There are? Okay.
Yeah.
And when's the repayment on that loan?
They were forgiven.
Say that again?
They were forgiven by Michael Lewitt.
And when were they forgiven?
I don't have the exact date, sir. I don't know.
Okay.
We can let you know.
We'll provide that.
Okay, and all $225,000 was forgiven?
Correct.
So nothing was repaid on it?
Correct.
According to Galanis, their goal was to make billions, not millions.
I have an opening statement, and if I could benefit from reading it. My name is Jason Galanis. I was a business partner of Hunter Biden and Devon Archer, among others, during the years of 2012 to 2015. Our business included the acquisition of an 85-year-old Wall Street firm, Burnham and Company, the $1.5 billion surviving division of Drexel, Burnham, Lambert, and, combining that with other businesses in insurance and wealth management we owned and acquired, with total audited assets over $17 billion. Our objective was to build a diversified private equity platform, which would be anchored by a globally known Wall Street brand together with a globally known political name. Our goal, that is, Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and myself, was to make billions, not millions.
Hunter Biden and his business associates approached the financial firm Burnham and proposed transactions for the firm involving Kazakhstan, Russia, and China.
As a backdrop, in early 2014, when Russia invaded Crimea and the Burisma board appointments occurred, Archer had recently been told by Chris Heinz that Heinz would be exiting their Rosemont partnership, which included the $2 billion Rosemont Realty, the company funded by Mikhail Shishkinov and Yelena Baturina. This would leave Archer and Hunter with no sizable Rosemont business through which to conduct their international business transactions. Burnham and Hunter were the designated replacements for the loss of Rosemont Realty and Heinz. In 2013, my business partner in California and I had already acquired a $1.4 billion life insurance company separate from Burnham. Against my partner's advice to stay away from Hunter, I agreed to become equity partners with Hunter and Devon in building the Burnham Group. The entire value add of Hunter Biden to our business was his family name and his access to his father, Vice President Joe Biden. Because of this access, I agreed to contribute equity ownership to them, Hunter and Devon, for no out-of-pocket cost to them in exchange for their, quote, relationship capital. As part of the evolving and deepening partnership, Hunter served as vice chairman to Burnham and brought strategic relationships to the venture, including from Kazakhstan, Russia, and China. Burnham was the focal point for integrating a, quote, Biden family office into a large-scale financial company with international influence.
When asked why Burnham wanted to buy one of Hunter and Eric Schwerin's entities, Galanis told the committee it was for one reason, the Biden lift.
Toward the end of 2013, Devon Archer had suggested, encouraged verbally, and in an email, that it would be a good idea to leverage Hunter more and include him in more business deals, compensate him. So that was the time frame, and I think early 2014 was when it became formalized.
What was the value that Hunter Biden brought to the table, according to Mr. Archer?
Well, it was. The term he used at the time was the Biden lift. Biden lift that we talked about was access. Access meant to us at the time being in the business of acquiring other businesses to persuade third parties to do business with us.
Hunter Biden and his associates cashed in on the Biden last name to form a partnership with a Chinese financial services company connected to the Chinese Communist Party. According to Galanis, Joe Biden would join the advisory board of a joint Chinese venture post-vice presidency. The chairman of the Chinese financial services company, Henry Zhao, was interested in this partnership because of the game-changing value add of the Biden family, including Joe Biden, who was to be a member of the Burnham Harvest team post-vice presidency, providing political access to the United States and around the world.
In 2014, I agreed with Hunter and Devon that the Burnham and Company enterprise would be significantly enhanced by forming a partnership with Harvest Fund Management, a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Harvest had already agreed to be a founding partner of a newly established fund called BHR. The partners wanted to expand this Chinese relationship through Burnham and did so through a series of investment structures intended to gain Chinese financial support. This effort was led by Hunter Biden's contact with Henry Zhao, the Harvest chairman. Mr. Zhao was interested in this partnership because of the game-changing value add of the Biden family, including Joe Biden, who was to be a member of the Burnham Harvest team post-vice presidency, providing political access to the United States and around the world.
Galanis told the committee that the promise that Joe Biden would sit on the board was a material inducement for the Chinese to invest millions of dollars into Burnham while Joe was vice president. He added, "The point was less the money and more the Chinese participation. The exchange, the quid pro quo, if you would, was if they invest in us, our financial platform gets bigger, more solidified. They get the benefit of Vice President Biden when he exits office to sit on their board. Both parties get something in the exchange." Switching gears, I want to bring you back to, I think you said this in your opening statement, the words material inducement. And it was in reference to Chairman Zhao, Henry Zhao, and Harvest and the representations that were made to Harvest Group. A material inducement was the board position of Joe Biden after he left the vice presidency, and there would be an investment from Harvest Group into Burnham. I don't know that we ever talked about the amount of money that Harvest Group was going to put into Burnham, so what was that dollar figure?
We touched on it. It was $18 million. We've then talked about a $12 million round. In other words, we were talking back and forth. It sort of depended. If we could get a larger valuation, we would take more money at that more favorable price. If the press was less favorable, we'd take less money. The point was less the money and more the Chinese participation. The exchange, the quid pro quo if you would, was if they invest in us, our financial platform gets bigger, more solidified. They get the benefit of Vice President Biden when he exits office to sit on their board. Both parties get something in the exchange. Now that was what intended.
Galanis testified that Hunter Biden took a call with his father and told him that he might need a little help getting his partnership with the Chinese financial services company across the finish line.
To provide Mr. Zhao a summary of the Burnham Harvest partnership, I worked with Hunter, Devin, and a number of people to create a presentation for Harvest, confirming the mutual benefits intended. In my opinion, there was no other reason for this massive Chinese enterprise to have been interested in doing business with Burnham other than the Biden name. Further to that, I recall being with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer at the Peninsula Bar in New York, where Hunter took a call from his father. He told his father things were going well with Henry and Harvest and that he might need a little help getting across the finish line. Hunter did not put the call on speaker, as we were at this bar, but I'm certain that Hunter was discussing our business efforts on the Burnham Harvest partnership and that the vice president was aware of these efforts.
On May 4th, 2014, Hunter Biden put his father on speakerphone with Russian oligarch Yelena Baturina and her husband Yuri Lushkov, the former mayor of Moscow. Galanis testified this was a prearranged call and that then Vice President Biden ended the call by telling the Russians, "Okay, you be good to my boy." Hunter Biden's email records corroborate his attendance at the event where the call took place.
The vice president said hello and some pleasantries, "Hope you had safe travels," and seemed like he wanted to bring the call to an end by saying, "Okay, you be good to my boy." Hunter responded by saying, "Everything is good and we're moving ahead." The vice president said something about being very helpful or being helpful, and Hunter ended the call by saying that he was going to call his father later. I recall being stunned by this call, to actually hear the vice president's voice on the phone. It was clear to me that this was a prearranged call with his father, meant to impress the Russian investors that Hunter had access to his father and all the power and prestige of that position.
A few days after this call, Ms. Baturina was committed to a hard order of $10 to $20 million in a Burnham investment banking client. This call and investment also come just a few months after the February 4th, 2014, dinner at Cafe Milano, where Joe Biden dined with Yelena Baturina.
A few days after this May 4th party, an email my lawyer provided to this committee shows that Devin had confirmed Ms. Baturina was committed to a, quote, hard order of $10 to $20 million in a Burnham investment banking client. Burnham also reached an agreement with a Ukrainian oligarch, Mykola Zlochevsky, for a $120 million investment into a new Burnham entity. The financial arrangement documented by the U.S. and Ukrainian lawyers laid out a 25% profit participation for the Burnham partners. The Burnham partners were not required to put up 25% of the capital. Instead, Burnham was putting up the relationship capital of the Biden name in foreign markets like Kazakhstan and Mexico, and elsewhere where oil concessions were sought from government.
In connection with the Burnham financial platform, Galanis engaged in unlawful conduct and is now serving a federal prison sentence. Galanis testified how he attempted to provide evidence to the Southern District of New York of Hunter Biden's relevance to his conviction, but they refused to take the information.
I accepted that I committed these crimes, and I deserved a lengthy sentence for my conduct, even offering from the time of my plea to provide prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York with any information that would assist in the thorough disclosure of the fraudulent conduct of all parties. The offer was rejected, especially because I was not asking for any reduction in charges on my sentence. My attorney at the time told me that the rejection was highly irregular. As I reviewed the facts, I realized the prosecutors in the SDNY Southern District of New York had gone lightly on Devin Archer and had not indicted Hunter Biden at all, despite the then available documentations that we were partners. We were involved in the decision-making that involved illegal self-dealing, and that all of us had financially benefited from these schemes. In fact, Hunter Biden and Devin's company, Rosemont Seneca Bohai, received $15 million of the tribal bond fraudulent scheme to be invested in the Burnham Group. I believe the SDNY's prosecution strategy was intended to protect Hunter Biden and ultimately Vice President Biden.
Galanis applied for CARES Act home confinement and went through a lengthy approval process. He was approved for home confinement on June 9, 2023. On June 12, 2023, the House Oversight Committee issued a subpoena to Devin Archer for testimony. The next day, on June 13, 2023, Galanis' approval for home confinement was reversed as a result of DOJ intervention.
On June 12th, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability announced that they were issuing a subpoena to Devin Archer relating to its inquiry into Joe Biden's business dealings, which would undoubtedly, in my mind, expose the dealings of Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and me. On June 13th, one day after the committee announced it would subpoena Devin Archer, my home confinement approval was reversed. I understand from a former high-ranking Bureau of Prisons official that the SDNY prosecutors aggressively weighed in with the Bureau of Prisons staff to oppose my release. As a result of this DOJ intervention, I was denied home confinement. I formally appealed the reversal. With each appeal stage, the BOP reason for my denial changed. For example, first, it was that there was too much time left on my sentence. This is not a valid reason for the denial.
Devin Archer confirmed Joe Biden was the brand, and he brought the most value to the brand.
You keep saying the brand, but by brand you mean the Biden family, correct?
Correct.
And that brand is what, in your opinion, was the majority of what the value that was delivered from Hunter Biden to Burisma?
I didn't say majority, but I wouldn't speculate on percentages, but I do think that that was an element of it.
When you say Biden family, sorry to cut in here. I just want to get a clarification. You aren't talking about Dr. Jill or anybody else. You're talking about Joe Biden. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Listen, I don't think about it as, Joe directly, but it's fair. That's fair to say. Obviously, that brought the most value to the brand.
Devin Archer admits the value of adding Hunter Biden to the Burisma board was it sent the right signals, and a lot of it's about opening doors, globally in D.C.
That Hunter Biden was adding value. His value that he was adding was, in part, as you said, his family.
Uh-huh.
And so what is your basis for knowing that?
My basis for knowing that? Well, I think there are particular, objectives that Burisma was trying to accomplish, and a lot of it's about opening doors, globally in D.C., and I think that, that was the, and then obviously having those doors opened, sent the right signals, for Burisma to, carry on its business and be successful.
Archer states Burisma would have gone out of business if not for the brand.
No. My only thought is that I think Burisma would have gone out of business if it didn't have the brand attached to it. That's my, only honest opinion. But I have no basis for never heard any conversations.
But that's different than Joe Biden's action.
Right.
You're just talking about that Hunter was on the board.
Right, and I think that's why.
And so
it was able to survive for as long as it did.
Because of additional capital or
just because of the brand.
Well, I don't understand. How does that have an impact?
Well, the capabilities to navigate D.C. that they were able to, basically be in the news cycle. And I think that preserved them from a longevity standpoint. That's like that's like how I think holistically.
But how would that work?
Because people would be intimidated to mess with them.
In what way?
Legally.
Devin Archer reveals then VP Joe Biden did attend dinners with Hunter Biden's foreign business associates who wired money to Biden-associated LLCs. And I want to talk about the value. Going back to this, it would be spring of 2014 Cafe Milano dinner.
Uh-huh. The spring of '14, yeah, the first one.
And since we talked about it before the break, if you could just recap, can you just say again who was there?
Sure. Kines Rakishev, Karim Masimov, Yelena Baturina.
possibly Yuri, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, possibly Eric Schwerin.
The duration of time that Joe Biden stayed there, you said you couldn't recall. But do you recall whether he had dinner or whether...
He had dinner, yeah. I recall that he had dinner. It was a regular, not a long dinner, but dinner.
And so this dinner takes place in spring of 2014, approximately. But then do you recall getting a wire on February 14th of 2014 from Yelena Baturina for $3.5 million to Rosemont Seneca Thornton?
To Rosemont Seneca Thornton?
Yes.
Yes, and why I remember that is from other testimony, yes.
All right, let's move on to the second dinner.
The second dinner?
The spring 2015 Cafe Milano. Who was there?
That dinner was... I think we went over it before, but it was Vadim, Hunter, Joe, myself, Karim Masimov, a Greek Orthodox priest, maybe someone from World Food Program.
And what did Joe do at that dinner? Did he have dinner? How long was he there?
He had dinner. And there was... On that one, I believe the first one was like a birthday dinner, and then the second was... I think we were supposed to talk about the World Food Program, so there was some talk about that.
Archer stated then VP Biden was on the phone over 20 times with Hunter Biden's business associates and that these phone calls were a signal. How many times would you say that Hunter Biden put his father on speakerphone or referenced his father being on the phone in front of others who were either foreign investors or foreign nationals who he was soliciting business with or working with approximately?
Approximately. The differentiation between investor and normal course of day, that's a very hard thing to speculate on. But they spoke every day. He acknowledged that they spoke every day. And he would sometimes make it apparent that he spoke to his dad, and sometimes he put him on speaker. But as far as quantifying the number, relative to investors, I don't know.
Not necessarily investors, but with people who Hunter Biden was trying to either get business with or make contacts with or add value to.
In my whole partnership, maybe 20 times.
And during those 20 times, did Hunter Biden ever place his dad on speakerphone?
Yes.
Majority Counsel asked if it would be weird to call my dad right now and put him on speakerphone. Devin Archer agreed that would be odd. But if I were to just call my dad right now and put him on speakerphone and we're in a professional business meeting here, would that be odd to you?
Would that be odd to me?
Yes.
That would be odd if you called your dad right now.
So there is a time and a place when it's professional to do, where you're in a personal meeting and you may call your dad or a family member if you're with family, but if you're in a professional meeting and you're meeting foreign business leaders or whoever it may be, and you just place your dad on speakerphone on the table, that's a little odd, isn't it?
That is a little odd. It's not odd. It's quite obvious what we're talking around.
So what are we talking about? You are talking around it. And so I'd like to get out. What are we talking about here?
That, I think, at the end of the day, part of what was delivered is the brand. It's like anything, if you're Jamie Dimon's son or any CEO, I think that's what we're talking about, is that there was brand being delivered along with other capabilities and reach.
Burisma executives requested Hunter Biden to get help from D.C. to address government pressure, and were aware Hunter had a very powerful name. Burisma executives requested Hunter Biden to get help from D.C. to address government pressure, and were aware Hunter had a very powerful name.
Yes, though I was not party to that phone call.
What was the request?
The request was, I think they were getting pressure, and they requested Hunter, help them with some of that pressure.
What pressure?
Government pressure on their, government pressure from Ukrainian government investigations into Mykola, etc. But it wasn't like not a specific request. It was just we were sitting there at the Four Seasons having, coffee, and there was Mykola, there was one of the managers for the Four Seasons who managed that property, Vadim. So it wasn't like it was not like a specific meeting.
When you say pressure from the government, at this time, were you aware that Viktor Shokin was investigating Burisma?
To the best, I vaguely, whether it was Shokin, I vague. There was a lot of pressure initially. There was several pressure issues. It was kind of a theme of Burisma. There was capital tied up in London, £23 million. There was, a U.S. visa denied and then a Mexico visa denied. And then so Shokin wasn't specifically on my radar as being an individual that was targeting him. But yes, there was constant pressure, and it was like whack-a-mole in regards to the pressures that had to resolve.
The request from Mr. Mykola Zlochevsky and Vadim to Mr. Biden, or if you said it was to you, the request for help from whom to deal with what pressure?
The request, basically the request is like, can DC help? But there were not, it wasn't like, There weren't specific, can the big guy help? It's always this amorphous, can we get help in D.C.?
Around the time Hunter Biden and his associates received a $3 million payment from a CEFC entity, Joe Biden attended a CEFC meeting at the Four Seasons in Washington, D.C. CEFC Chairman Ye Jianming and other CEFC officials were in attendance. Did Joe Biden ever attend any location or meeting or place where CEFC officials were also there?
Yes, at the Four Seasons in a restaurant in a private room.
What CEFC officials were there?
As best you can remember.
I don't know if Zhang was there, but I believe that Ye was there. I'm certain of it.
And Ye is Chairman Ye Jianming?
Sorry, what was that?
I'm certain. I'm certain Ye was there.
So Ye Jianming is the chairman of CEFC, correct?
Yes.
And then, again, was this before you received the $3 million from the CEFC-linked company or after?
This was likely. The meeting was likely before.
So before, only time it happens. Only time Joe Biden shows up in a meeting, he gives a 10-minute presentation to the entire group, and a few days later you get $3 million?
He'd had discussions beforehand with CEFC, meaning James Gilliar had, but if that's how it happened, yes.
Hunter Biden and his associates' work with CEFC, a Chinese government-linked energy company, began in February 2016 when Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States. However, Hunter Biden and his associates were not paid until after Joe Biden left office. So it's fair to say that by February of 2016, you, James Gilliar, and Hunter Biden had began pursuing business with CEFC.
That is correct.
What kind of work did you do for CEFC leading up to that meeting?
We introduced them to a bunch of potential projects. I think a lot of the projects were maybe in documents that you shared with me earlier. I remember a greenfield project that I was working on in Colombia. It was an oil and gas project there. I believe James was working on some projects in Oman, an oil and gas project. I don't know exactly where.
This was 2015-2016 timeframe?
Yes.
But you had received no payment for any of that work, correct?
That's correct.
Rob Walker admitted Hunter Biden's last name would probably get people in the door, and had a letter he drafted to CEFC Director Zhang placed on Hunter Biden's letterhead because he was the son of the vice president at the time. Why would you have it sent from Hunter Biden's letterhead instead of from James Gilliar or you?
I think what is common with U.S. companies working with individuals abroad, those individuals they don't. They aren't taken seriously unless they have a calling card like this or something that says that they represent. So if you wouldn't, this is just normal, customary business practice.
But why use Hunter Biden to send the letter instead of Rob Walker or James Gilliar, especially if James Gilliar had the original relationship?
Hunter and our relationship was, everybody had different roles. He was the one that I imagined Zhang would expect it to come from.
Is it because he was the son of the vice president at the time?
Well, I think in Zhang's eyes, that I worked for Hunter and that James worked for us or for Hunter. And so that would be. He was viewed as the principal of this organization by Zhang.
And that's because of his last name?
I can't answer for Zhang, but sure, he had an interesting last name that would probably get people in the door.
So why did the letter come from Hunter Biden? And you said earlier this morning that you thought the Chinese would expect the letter to come from Hunter Biden. Why was that the case?
Right, it had just seemed, if a U.S. entity was going to have a foreign national represent them, it would probably make more sense to come from Hunter versus me.
Because he's the son of the vice president at the time, correct?
He's the son of a vice president at the time, yes.
So it made more sense to get this business deal to put him as the front-facing person, right?
Yes.
Here is Hunter Biden's letterhead being used for a draft letter to CEFC Director Zhang. Rob Walker's account, Robinson Walker LLC, received the $3 million payment from the CEFC entity on March 1st, 2017. The next day, he wired $1,065,000 to James Gilliar, a Biden family associate, and then over the course of several months, wired incremental payments to the Bidens totaling around $1,065,000. Rob Walker told investigators Hunter asked him to send incremental payments to various Biden accounts, including Hallie Biden and James Biden, who were not affiliated with the CEFC deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that on March 1st of 2017, according to bank records that the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed related to your Robinson Walker LLC, on March 1st of 2017, State Energy HK Limited wired $3 million into your LLC, Robinson Walker LLC, correct?
Correct.
Then, and we have an image of it below. The next day, on March 2nd of 2017, James Gilliar to his company EEIG receives $1,065,000, correct?
Correct.
I think we have a chart. So within a week, money starts going to Hunter Biden.
That's correct.
You recall that?
Yes.
So why were there amounts sent like 5,000, 25,000, 50,000 in the same month? Like, why not just send him the $1,065,000 that he was owed at that point?
I don't recall specifically, but the way I viewed it at the time, it was his money and that's how he wanted it.
All right, so that's how he wanted it. He wanted the money sent to him in this particular manner.
That's correct.
And is he also the one that requested that the money that came in from State Energy HK, that would be sent to Hallie Biden as well?
That's correct.
During the Obama-Biden administration, Hunter Biden, Rob Walker, and James Gilliar had a lucrative contract with Romanian businessman Gabriel Popoviciu, who was under investigation. Walker was unable to articulate what services the partners provided for $180,000 monthly from Popoviciu. The payments abruptly ended shortly after Joe Biden left the vice presidency. I've counted approximately 17 payments from Bladen Enterprises Limited
Yeah.
over to Robinson Walker LLC.
That's right.
All of them, except for one payment, occur while Vice President Joe Biden was in office.
That's right.
When he steps out of office, the payments stop. But Gabriel Popoviciu's case continues. So why is it that you all have stopped getting paid the same time that Joe Biden stepped out of office?
I don't know. Gabriel had the opportunity to stop payments, I believe, at any time in the contract.
Well, so just so I understand it, Mr. Popoviciu decided to stop making payments to you, Hunter Biden, and James Gilliar once Joe Biden left office?
If you say so. I don't know that for certain, or I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know.
Rob Walker testified that he maintained a close friendship with Hunter Biden since the Clinton administration. But their friendship abruptly ended after Hunter Biden refused to repay a $50,000 loan from Walker. Okay, but again, you're great friends with him, I understand. Obviously, you're great friends if you give him a $50,000 loan.
Uh-huh.
But, why you and not his Uncle Jim or somebody else?
I don't know. We had a lot of transactions together, as you saw.
Uh-huh.
And I may have had the money, clearly, so I gave it to him.
Okay, did you expect to get paid back for that $50,000?
I did.
Okay, and you haven't been paid back, is that correct?
That's correct.
Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family.
I want to be crystal clear. From my direct personal experience and what I've subsequently come to learn, it is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family.
I'm going to read into the record what I believe is James Gilliar in the white message. Man, would love to have you there for collective understanding. Know it's last minute. Do understand if you cannot make it. As for Hunter, I'm going to kick his arse if he no-shows, but in brand he's imperative, but right now he's not essential for adding input to business. Your call, buddy. Rob is in.
James Gilliar knew from day one what he was doing. You showed me the message in December 2015 what he was doing. He knew he was taking call it the second most powerful family in the United States and putting them in business with one of the top 10 largest companies in China with extremely close ties to the Chinese Communist Party. And once again, don't take my word for that. Go read the 8 days of testimony in the SDNY where they convicted a CEFC executive of corruption, money laundering, and a variety of other things and sent him to prison for 3 years. So he's just talking about the Biden name and the power of using that to move the Chinese forward. And to your question on Hunter's services, he wasn't providing much service of anything at that point. He was providing his name and the power of his family and what they've developed over the prior 50 years. And once again, just to clarify, don't take my word for that. Hunter Biden says that in his own words.
Joe Biden not only knew about his family's business dealings, but he enabled them and participated in them, despite being buffered by a scheme to maintain plausible deniability.
His family's foreign influence peddling operation, from China to Ukraine and elsewhere, sold out to foreign actors who were seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. Joe Biden was more than a participant in and a beneficiary of his family's business. He was an enabler, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability. The only reason any of these international business transactions took place, with tens of millions of dollars flowing directly to the Biden family, was because Joe Biden was in high office. The Biden family business was Joe Biden, period.
Tony Bobulinski tried to get other Biden family associates to tell the truth about Joe Biden's involvement in his family's business schemes. However, one replied, "You're just going to bury all of us, man." Okay, was Mr. Walker, you had a telephone call with him where he related to you that he thought, I think he said something along the lines of, "Tony, you're going to bury us."
You are correct.
What can you tell us about that call, and why do you think Rob Walker said that?
So this goes back to the time of October 2020. Remember, the minority was asking me questions on this of well, when did you exactly realize you were going to go public and, what caused it and stuff like that. Throughout October 2020, I had numerous discussions with James Gilliar and Rob Walker talking about, guys, we lived these facts. I met with Joe Biden. You guys know Joe Biden was involved. This is going to come out. I would rather come out. All of us come out on the record and present the facts to the American people than somebody else tell the story, like the Bidens telling the story, or their Democratic operatives and stuff like that, and obfuscating what truly happened.
If he doesn't come out on record, I am providing the facts.
Tony, you're just going to just bury all of us, man.
Joe Biden is the big guy.
Then the distribution of the equity. Now, previously we had gone through the actual documents that were signed for Oneida Holdings, and the bubble diagram was used to spell out the different ownership. But this shows 20% for HH is Hunter Biden, 20% for RW is Rob Walker, 20% for JG is James Gilliar, 20% for TB, that's me, Tony Bobulinski, and then it says 10 for Jim, and that's Jim Biden. And then it says 10 held for H for the big guy. The H in that message is Hunter Biden, and the big guy, 100%, is Joe Biden.
Why do you say that 100%?
It's crystal clear. There's nobody else who they would be listing as the big guy. Remember, this email was drafted to me with an expectation that no outside party, this wouldn't be part of congressional hearings. These guys are all low-key. I was low-key. Well, why was he using code? Why is he calling Hunter H? Why is he using the big guy? Well, because that's the way James Gilliar communicated because of his intel background and the things he was doing around the world. But when he says 10 held by H for the big guy, it's Joe Biden.
Joe Biden has repeatedly lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's business dealings. You just made a comment about Joe Biden being a public, or excuse me, Joe Biden being a private citizen, but I want to talk to you a little bit about, and you mentioned it earlier, while Joe Biden was a candidate for President of the United States, a statement that he made saying, "My family has made no money from China." Is that accurate?
That's an absolute lie. He lied to the American people. I was sitting in the audience when he made that lie. And I publicly said on Tucker Carlson, I sit here with regret. I should have jumped over the rails there I should have made more of a scene about it.
And as president, Joe Biden has stated that he's never talked with any of the Biden family business associates. Is that accurate?
That's an absolute lie. And you don't have to take just my word for it. You have Devin Archer. You have thousands of documents. You have other participants. You believe whistleblower Shapley and Ziegler. You have enough evidence because people love to use that word, especially it's shocking to me the lawyers are using that.